Welcome to Watsonx Orchestrate Hands-on Lab. This lab covers Watsonx Orchestrate APIs. Now, this lab is building on the knowledge and agents created in earlier labs. Will show you how to authenticate with Orchestrate. You get to list tenants, agents, and tools, and fetch historical data using the Watsonx Orchestrate API. So let's look at what we will learn here. Once you have completed this lab, you will have developed skills enabling you to complete the following tasks. First is to authenticate with your Orchestrate environment. Next, you can use the API to get a list of tenants, use the API to discover tools available, and use the API to discover agents available in your environment. Next, you get to chat with an agent using a single prompt. You can also continue a conversation with an agent, and then we'll look at how to fetch a conversation thread. Let's look at what are the prerequisites needed for this particular lab. So make sure you have the following things satisfied before you start with the lab. You have performed the preparation lab guide, including the environment validation steps, which we've done earlier in the earlier labs too. And you have your ADK environment set up and running, which is the Orchestrate server, which you started after validating the environment in the preparation guide or after having performed another ADK related lab, which we did earlier. Now, if for some reason your server is not started correctly, reset your server following the reset your environment guide that is provided. The APIs used in this lab are using web services based on the OpenAI specification, which is OAS. Basically, knowledge of the format is not required, but it is useful to improve your own knowledge and to extend agents' behavior using tools that leverage web services. You can look at the resources. You can go to this website, openapis.org/what-is-OpenAPI, and you can read all about how to set up OpenAPI, what is OpenAPI, what is the life cycle, and all these information is available here. This is the basic information that I was talking about. But as I mentioned, it's not required for this particular lab. So close this here. And then let's look at what we will be covering in this lab. So these are different things that will go step by step, starting with deploying the Weatherman agent. Now, in this particular task, we will import a tool and deploy the Weatherman agent that was used in an earlier lab. So first, let's go ahead to our environment. I'm going to open my environment. It disconnected, so it's reconnecting to my Windows virtual machine. Over here, I'm going to go ahead and open my PyCharm and go through the commands one at a time. So as soon as it opens up, make sure everything is set up properly from before. If not, go ahead and put your instance and APIs over here. But again, next step is to, let's change this prompt to just saying prompt ADK. So let's go there, and now we have that ADK. I'm going to go ahead and clear this out so it's much more clear. Maybe get some extra space here. And then our first command that we will run is orchestrate tools import the flag k with open API, which is kind, and f is file, which is dot slash. We have it in our weatherman slash tools slash weather api.yaml. If you look here inside weatherman tools, this is where the tools are available. I'm going to go ahead and press enter. It says tool forecast imported successfully. That's what you want to see in this particular case. Now again, to go over this particular command, as I mentioned, as we did this earlier, orchestrate command, this is the CLI for the orchestrate platform. You use it to manage your agents, tools, workflows, and integrations. In this particular case, we are doing that for tools here. By saying tools, this is the sub command that tells orchestrate that you're working with tools, not agents or workflows. Now, tools can be APIs, functions, external services that agents can call during execution. Next, we have the import, which this action registers a new tool with Orchestrate. That's what we use import for. So take this external definition and make it available as a tool. That's what we are saying here. Next, we have dash K and open API. Dash K flag stands for kind or type, where I'm saying the kind is open API. So this tells Orchestrate the tool is defined using an OpenAI Swagger specification, which we'll look at it in a little while. And Orchestrate should parse endpoints, extract the request response schemas, and auto generate callable tool functions. That's what I'm saying here. Supported kinds here are usually OpenAPI, functions, script, others. Next thing that I'm doing is the flag F, which means file. This points to the OpenAI specification file that describes the API. So if I open this here, you'll probably see this has all the information about where the API is. So in this case, open material is what we are using, what the description is, what the title is. So we're giving all the information about that particular API that we'll be using in this particular YAML file here. So it can have your API endpoints, HTTP methods, your parameters, authentication, and your response schemas. So what happens when you run this? Again, as you saw here, it validates the OpenAPI spec from this YAML file, and each API endpoint becomes a tool function, which we'll look in a little while. Now, agents can now do things like call the weather API, or it can even say get current weather for San Francisco. The tool becomes available in Orchestrate in the workflows and the agents now. Our next step is to create an agent. So I'm going to go ahead and say Orchestrate agents import -f / weatherman / weatherman YAML. That's what I'm going to run this, which is this here. This has the definition of the agent right over here. So again, if we have to go step by step, and you see that it says agent weatherman imported successfully, that means it worked. But what did it do here? So here again, Orchestrate is the CLI, agents is the subcommand that is used that tells Orchestrate that you're working with agents, not tools or workflows in this particular case. And then what are agents? Now, agents in this particular case are reasoning entities powered by an LLM. They can able to plan, decide, and call tools, and they're configured via a declarative YAML file right over here, which is what we are importing using this import and giving the flag for the location of the file location right over here. So what happens when you run this? Orchestrate loads the weatherman YAML. It validates the agent configuration, and the agent is registered or updated if it already exists. So as you can see here, it says imported successfully, which means it never existed before. So let's go ahead to the next part. Now that we have our first step done, which is deploying the weatherman agent, next let's go ahead and authenticate using the API. Now in this particular part, we will be using the API to authenticate a user with Watsonx Orchestrate ADK API. In this particular case, a token is required to communicate with the API endpoints, and after authenticating successfully, you will receive a token that can be used to authenticate the request to other API endpoints. So let's go ahead and open a browser. I'm going to go back here, open a browser, and this I'll enter localhost :4321, which is the port number /docs. So this will open my documents or the Swagger document for the API that we just installed. So here you will see the API documentation indicating that the ADK API is running successfully. This is an auto-generated API documentation and test page, which was generated according to the OpenAPI specification, which we mentioned earlier. So everything is available right over here. So within this page, let's go ahead and locate the auth section. So I'm going to scroll down, or I can just search for it. Let's go ahead, and that's where our auth section is. And what are the different APIs available here? First one is register a user profile. Second is login for token. So I'm going to click on login for token here, and then I'll say try it out. And now the things that are required here are username and password. So I'm going to enter this username. You can follow along with the same username. The username here is wxo.archer@ibm.com, and the password in this particular case will be Watson X all lowercase, and I'll execute this. And once I execute, you'll probably see the response coming back as 200, and we have the access token right here. Sorry if it's very small. I tried to zoom in, but anyway, I'm going to just copy this access token and I'll put it in my notes. I've created a notes folder here where I'm going to save all these things. So I have my access token saved here now. So now that we have our access token saved, let's look at the next step. Our next step is list or using an access token in the UI to authorize the request. So let's see how we can do authorization. So go back. So all API endpoints require authorization that are available in here. So all the API endpoints require authorization. So for that, what I'm going to do is, now that we're done with authentication, I'm going to go to authorize here, click this button, and here I will enter that. As you can see, I probably have done it a bunch of times before, but I need the recent token. I'll copy this, go back here and paste that there and authorize. It should work. Perfect. So that worked. I'm going to close this and I'm going to close this. So my authorization is done. So what do I do next? Let's go back here to our document, listing tenants. So we're going to go ahead and list the tenants. In this section, we will be querying the API to get the list of tenants available in our environment. Now, each tenant is an isolated space for creating and managing agents, tools, chat, and usage tracking. Think of it as like your own kitchen sink. By having different tenants, your teams can collaborate on agent-based solution in a contained manner and separate projects on workspaces, which enable you with tighter control on which agents and tools are available within each tenant. So let's go ahead and locate something called as tenant management in here. Tenant management. There you go. So we have tenant management where you can fetch the tenants. We can create tenants. Let's go and open fetch tenants in this particular case. And in here, I'm going to say try it out and I'll press execute. It's going to go ahead and execute based on the authentication authorization that we've done. The first one, which is default WXO tenant, ID unknown, we don't need that. So what we will do is we'll go to the next one, which should be our WXO dev. So look for WXO dev and the ID that you receive here. That's what we are interested in. If you scroll down a little bit more, you'll probably see like created by username wxoarcher@ibm.com. And since we logged in with using that, that means that's the ID that we're interested in. So I'm going to go back to my notes here, add that ID right here, keep it available for our next step. What is our next step? Let's go back here. This guy, updating the token to specify a tenant. So we need to work with this particular tenant. So for some operations, the API requires authentication. As I mentioned, that includes a specific tenant identification. Now that we have this tenant, let's go ahead and reauthorize using this particular tenant ID. So I'm going to go back here. Let's go back to our auth. And in here, let's go get the token, access token. If you see here, we already have that username password entered, which we did before, but it also has a tenant ID. So I'm going to take that tenant ID that I just received right over here, copy this, paste it in this tenant ID field. Perfect. I have that. Everything looks good. Execute. I hope the username password are right. It is because I got an access token here. So I'm going to take that access token, copy this, save it in my, I don't need the previous one, but I'll just keep it there for now. So now that I have the access token, what do I do next? Authorize it. So I'll copy this, go to the top, click on authorize, and I'll say here, log out and enter this new and say authorize. So now I'm authorized with this new access token that I have. So perfect. So I have that. So now you're logged in with a tenant access token and can run commands against a specific tenant. Now this ADK can support connections to multiple different tenants, a local developer edition tenant and multiple remote tenants. So that's how you can use this. So what is the next step? So next step is listing the registered tools. So let's go ahead to the tool section here. So we have tools here. So here we will be querying the API to get the list of tools available in your environment. Now tools registered in your environment can be referenced and used by agents which are in the same tenant. If you remember, we did register some tools earlier. So let's go ahead and see if it can fetch those tools. So I'm going to click on fetch tools, close this. And here, let's see, everything is available. It's already executed, looks like. Let me close this. Say try it out. Okay, let's go and execute it one more time. run it, and we get our execution done here. What does it have here? If you look at it, it says weather information for given, and the name of the tool is forecast. Where does this come from? If you remember, okay, let me just, we did that here, right? Forecast imported successfully, and that's how we have this tool available right over here. So we have the tool option available here. So we were able to fetch the tools that are available based on what we have entered earlier. You can scroll through it, you'll not see anything else because that's the only tool that we have installed in our tenant. What's the next step? So we saw how to do everything using that Swagger API, but now let's use something called as Bruno for our API testing. Now in this section, we will be exploring the API that we just did using an API client called Bruno, which is a fast and lightweight tool for testing APIs. Now in the following section, we will log in using the tenant specific authentication token, which Bruno will save and use for further interactions with the API. So in your environment, if you go back, I can keep it on the side. If you see on the desktop, I have a tool called as Bruno. So I'm going to double click on that. It will open Bruno tool. I'll make sure that it's full screen, and you'll see that WXO API is already there available with all the APIs that we would need for this lab. And then next step is, let's go and get the token. So yeah, the same thing that we did before. The username and password is already there. It's exactly the same as before. So I'm going to go ahead and press this button here and execute it. What do I have? An access token. Now I don't have to copy it to my notes. Why? Because if you look at the script here in the post response, you'll see it automatically adds that access token that it fetched into the environment variables. So everything is set for you automatically using this API client. You don't have to do it manually every single time you do that. You do kind of what we did earlier with the Swagger. So what is the next step? Next step is listing the tenants using Bruno. So I'm going to go here and make sure this is selected so we know which one we are at. I'm going to go back here and I'm going to go to get tenants here, API. Now inside get tenants, what does it need? If you look at headers, you see authorization bearer access token. Already that access token that we just got is mentioned over here. So I'm going to just go and execute this. So let's see if we get the tenants. And if you see, we got the default WXO tenant, which as I mentioned, we don't need that. I'm going to go to the next one because we created a tenant ourselves, and that tenant is available here. WXO dev ID is this one. So how does the system know which tenant to pick? If you look at script, again, post response, this code is added for you where it says that if it's WXO dev, this is the name, that's what you will set the tenant ID as. So the environment variable is set with this tenant ID as soon as you executed this. So that's perfect. What's the next step? If you remember, our next step was to getting a tenant specific access token. So for that, we have one more available here, the third option, get tenant access token. Let's make it a little bit wider so we can see. Get tenant access token. Inside this, if you see the parameters, tenant ID is already added. Where is the tenant ID coming from? If you remember here, the tenant ID was added, and to access that as before, it's inside the curly brackets and available right here. So I'm going to go ahead and press this button, and you see the new access token is generated for this particular tenant ID. If you go to the script part again, you'll probably see this access token is now set as the new environment variable. Perfect. So that's good. So next step in this particular case is listing the registered agents. So for this registered agents, listing the registered agents, we're going to go back and go to get agents. Okay, in here, I'll probably look at headers. The access token is already there. Or just execute this. And if you see, we get our tenant ID, and this is the name of the agent that is there, which is Weatherman, which is available right over here. So next, what you can do is you can copy this ID that is available here, copy this, and this will be used for our next topic, which is chatting with an agent. So we have that agent available. We found that agent here, only one agent, because as you remember, we only installed one agent using earlier steps. So let's go ahead and take this agent and chat with it. I'm going to open this weather agent chat part 1, and here instead of this is what we've used before probably. So I'm going to use this agent ID here and then execute it. What will it do? It will call the agent, but what will it call with? So if you look at the body here, I am saying this is the message that I want to send to that particular agent. What am I sending? What is the current temperature in Tokyo? And it says the current temperature in Tokyo is 1.6. Why and how does it get this information? This information is fetched from OpenMateo because that's what we used in our Swagger document or in our YAML. That's what we specified, and that's what we get here. So again, we went through the parameters, we added the agent ID, and with body, we said what is the current temperature in Tokyo. I can change this to and say what is the current temperature in San Francisco. Run this again. It'll take a few seconds, and as you can see, the current temperature in San Francisco is 7.5 degrees Celsius. Again, it shows in Celsius because it's set up as Celsius. You can change that to Fahrenheit if you're more comfortable with that. But again, so we have this agent working and running. So I hope you were able to get through this, because the next one is continuing a chat with an agent. So if I go here to the second chat here, if you see there's agent ID already added. So let's make sure that we get the same agent ID, copy this, and I'm going to add here, okay, the second agent ID. Now in this particular, the same agent ID. In this particular case, I'm going to go and ask what is the temperature there now. So what will it give me? Will it give me the weather for Tokyo or for San Francisco? Let's run it and check it out. And it says, could you please tell me city or location you're referring to? So it doesn't remember. Why? Because if you look at headers, it has something called as a thread ID, which is from before. So if I go back here and I look at the data that I got here, there was a thread ID. So I'm going to copy this thread ID, go to my second here and delete this because that thread probably doesn't exist anymore. I'm going to add that thread. So I forgot to add that. So agent ID is added, body we have what is the temperature there, and headers we have this particular thread ID. So let's go ahead and run it. So let's see which city it picks up. The current temperature in San Francisco is 7.5 degrees Celsius. Why? Because we first asked for Tokyo, then we went to San Francisco, and then we asked what is the current temperature there now. So there meaning the last one that we spoke to, and that's how we get this. So that kind of brings us to fetch a thread of messages. So we did a bunch of different messages. Now, how do you know that how it found out which city to predict the temperature for? That's why we can look at this option where we are fetching a thread of messages, where we can look at all the messages that are available. So I'm going to go back here and we can click on get for thread messages. Inside this, there's headers or access token is there. Next one, variables, there's thread ID. So this is where we would need the thread ID. So I'm going to go back here, get my thread ID. That's the right, oh no, I think I'm in the wrong. Yeah, that's the thread ID. Copy that, go back to thread messages, remove this and paste this one, the new one, and let's run this. So what it's going to do is it's going to go to that thread and tell me what are the different messages that were sent. So it says, what is the current temperature in San Francisco? Then I said it gave me this answer, the current temperature. Next, I asked for what is the temperature there now, and it gave me that temperature. Now, why is it missing Tokyo? Because that was done in a different thread. We didn't save the thread as and when we did. Whatever we took was the temperature for San Francisco, and that's how we got this particular temperature. Now, if you wanted to continue with the same conversation as the first one, because every time I run this, it will create a new thread ID for me. But if you want to keep on continuing, what you have to do is make sure that you have this variable in the headers, which is x-ibm-thread ID, and pass the thread ID for the thread that you want to keep on continuing. So remember this. This is probably a thing to remember, because you initially I started with Japan, but I lost that thread because I just changed the city name in my body and then started a new thread. And that's what you get to see right over here in this particular part. All the messages from now going forward, whatever I send here. So for example, the thread ID is saved right here in body. What is the temperature there now? I can say what is the temperature there for next 3 hours, next 3 days, let's say. Run this, and the question is beyond my capability. I can just change this to say what is, let's go back, Let's go and change this temperature there now to what is the temperature in LA. Let's see if it gives me answer for LA. 8.4 in San Francisco. In LA, it is 14.5 degree. And let's go back to the thread messages. Run this. Now I ran a bunch of different things, different messages to the same thread. The current temperature in San Francisco is 7.5. Then I asked what is the temperature there now, and it gave me that. And then I went and asked for the next 3 days. It said that, oh, I don't know. The question is beyond my capability. Then I said, what is next 3 hours? Again, same answer. And then I said, what is the temperature in San Francisco? Again. And then finally, I said, what is the temperature in LA, and it gave me the answer for that. So if you see, the thread is continuing. More messages you add, make sure that you involve that thread ID. So that kind of completes our current lab. And in this lab, you have learned how to connect and use the APIs offered by Watsonx Orchestrate using the build and API documentation. Now, this documentation is provided when using a developer edition server, but it can become cumbersome. So we also used an API testing tool like the Bruno one that we used. Now, in real world environments, you can use Watsonx Orchestrate to develop agents and integrate them with your own solutions using the APIs used in this particular lab. Best of luck. If you have any questions, let me know and I'll get back to you.